front section is being put on now, as you can see. We've put on this centre section at the top, we've added the small window, and we've done exactly the same with our the little putty slash filler liquid styrene mix we've made, and we've just put all that in there around there as well. Because it's the capillary reaction with it draws it along and it's self-leveling, it's quite a bonus because you have to do minimal sanding to clean all that up. So really that brings us to the end of actually doing the glass work down here as we work our way around. You might notice as well we've put on these extra bit of masking onto this side down here. That's purely because I haven't made my mind up if we're going to have the blast shields up or down. Not sure yet. As I say, we've got both options. At the same time as I was waiting for things to dry on there, we've moved on a little bit with the gear, but it's pretty straightforward how this actually goes. What you've got, these parts are two halves, okay, for the down legs. Put them together, and then we've glued this strut system in there, and it's all still a loose maneuverable fit, as you can see, like this. Then eventually you'll be able to put the wheels in and they go in. Now they are a bit of a handful to get in there. It takes a little bit of jiggling around, but I've got to take that one out again because we need to paint it as a separate anyway. But that gives you the sort of feel for how those will look on there. As I said, pretty straightforward on them. The other thing as well, we put the props together, as you can see. Now, the drawback to these props is that, quite frankly, this bit in here, there is a sink mark on every single one. Now, what I've used is our little styrene filler mix again, and I've popped it down in there, and then all we're doing is coming along with a medium sanding stick, just a small one. As you might be able to see, you still got that little dark pit in there. All right, so we're just gonna sand that in. And remember, you're not trying to sand it all away, you're just trying to blend it in. So we're just going to use the medium side just to take it out until that little black dot disappears, which means we've filled in that area. And that's the thing about using a darker colour, we can take care of it. But you can see it's like that one there, and then obviously this one. So we've got to take out all these other ones, but unfortunately they are quite sightly, so you do have to remove them. Okay, so we just take that out. But so that's those all out, no problem. We've got to do the same on the other side and on the other one as well, because the sink marks all completely all over them. Now, last up, we've actually got, before we sort of get on with the paint side of things, we've got the external photo etch set for it, which is quite a straightforward piece. It's just this little guy here, as you can see. Now, as you can see, we've got the grill one. We can put that one in afterwards, to be honest, and sink that one in, so I'm not worried about that. This is this window business we were talking about. So actually we've got these sort of blast type shields that go on for the windows and everything else. This guy down here, you are never going to see it because he's going to be underneath the clear part, so I won't worry about it too much. But what we have got is these guys along here, which are called number 2s. All right, now number 2s, when you look at your sheet, okay, are the square panels. Okay, so you've got them down here running across, which we've got to put on the wing, and on the other side, as you might see, we've already put some on. We've got these down here, which are in essence this section here, but then also what you've got is this section here, which is the outer one, which are this area here, which they are on here, but to be honest, they're not exactly the best job in the world. They're pretty thin and put out. So if we just put a few on, I'll show you how I do it. It is important that you make sure you get the right ones, because quite frankly there are not a lot of difference in sizes. Okay, so you might grab the wrong one by mistake. Now normally you would lay this down on something hard, we've spoken about it before, cutting surface, something like that, and check them out. I tend to just nip them off with scissors. I find that a little bit easier. Okay, so we need number 3 or a number 3. There's quite a few of the same ones. Okay, so it's not too much of a problem, but with all photo etch you need to keep it flat. Otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to have trouble with it conforming to the surface. It's easier to start off flat and then work around. Now this guy is going to go in here. Now because we've sanded very close to this, it's a beautiful thing. That's because it was going to put back everything we've taken off. They do fit exactly the size that's down there. So what we need is a little bit of super glue. So just down here I've got, get it to come out, some thick, when I say thick, it's only because it's gone off versus bought thick. It's just a medium glue, but it's a little bit thicker. It's one of my older ones. Okay, so we're just going to grab, and a usual thing with all super glue, less is best. You want the minimum amount. We're just going to spread it in the central area, but we're not going to the edges, because we know for a fact when we push this bit of photo etch down, it is going to physically squish it out to the edges anyway. All right, so what you can do, you can, with this one, because it's a nice big one, you can just drop it in roughly into position. All right, and then we're just going to come along with our scissors, and then what we do is push down, just give it a little wiggle to the sides, and what that actually does then is make sure it pushes through, so you don't have a cushion above, pushes it all to the outside. Now I have got some super glue come up through the holes. I'm going to leave them, okay, because they will dry back and it will lay flat, and away you go. Okay, so that's that one on. Then we've got these number 3s, okay, of which I think we've got quite a few of these. Just making sure we have got the right, sorry, number 14s. Now the number 14s, we've got multiples all over here. So what I'm going to do is just going to ping a couple of these off. Okay, and then we're just going to go downwards. We'll just cut this last one off here. Then we've got them like a daisy chain. Remember to keep your photo etch flat if you can. Okay, there you are going to end up with a little tab at one end. Alright, so just make sure you spin him around and get it. Now, a lot of the times you'll get them and they do have a top and a bottom. These particular ones, to be honest, it doesn't matter because it's literally just a piece. So you might notice on here they look different. It's just because one side's etched and eaten slightly, the other side isn't. It's just normal metal because it's the bottom. Okay, so we're just going to flick this guy off. But when you're putting on these types of things, you just want to take your time a little bit. Patience is definitely a virtue when it comes to this type of stuff. Okay, so we're just going to grab our glue again. Okay, we're just going to put a dot in the middle. Now the idea of using a thicker super glue is just that it gives it a little bit of room to maneuver. If you put in there a thin glue, what can happen is that it will literally want to bite where it sticks. Okay, as soon as you put it down, it will grip. And away you go. The other thing is one of these. Okay, this is those cheapo Chinese. They designed for like rhinestone, picking up beads and things like that. Okay, but they're great for our type of thing as well. The only thing is you do want to keep them somewhat sharp. Okay, and all it is a wax pencil. When we say wax, we mean proper wax. Alright, but you can pick these up literally. A pack of 12 is something like a couple of quid. They really are cheap. But what you can do, or hopefully do, is grab these just like this, and then you can come along, place them down, give them a nudge. Okay, and we're coming in with this one. And with this one. Sometimes they pick up, other times they don't. But they're dead handy if you're using photo etch because you can be very precise on where you place them and you push them down and everything else. So all you're going to do is literally follow that through absolutely everywhere, placing them down, making sure they're all in there and you're all good. We're going to come along with primers and that will help bite and seal them down. If you're not, a little tip you can do is use a little bit of clear gloss, Future is perfect for it, and just give it a coat, brush a coat over it. That just helps it seal down the edges because sometimes it does bend up a little bit. And when you're dealing with plastic, like here in the middle of the wing, for instance, if you give it a push, it sinks in a bit. What can happen then, the photo etch can bow up. And when you release it, you end up with a gap all the way around, which is fine now. But when you're coming along with weathering washes and scrubbing and things like we might do later, if it gets under it, it's going to ping off and you're going to have nothing but trouble. But because we're going onto plastic as well, it's a nice secure bite. It's not like it's gone onto something like a primer and perhaps can peel and things like that. So that's that one done. So what I'm going to do is clean up the props. Going to put the rest of this photo etch completely right the way over the top of it, everything else like that. We're going to go around placing the windows and we're going to tack them into place. Okay, and especially don't glue the underside one, this guy just down here. You want to leave him, he isn't glued in, it's just a loose fit, but I can still get in there to poke him out because we need to add the guns, okay, and to the front details as well, as all of this will go in, and we'll place this guy in. Eventually it will sit in the front just like this to give us a nice sort of bomber look. and everything else. But the thing is, because we want the guns to go in there, we can do that as a separate. You can add all your little bits of detail as well inside the cockpit, the gun magazines, things like that, and everything else. As soon as we got all this photo etch work on there and everything else, and it's sealed up, we can move over, get it in the paint bay, and we get some paint on it. Okay, so we've pushed on with this one and we've got it all basically together now. A couple of things we've done. Obviously, as you can see, we've masked off the bomb bay. We don't want anything getting in there. We've also installed this bottom bit. Originally, I wasn't going to, but I think it's just going to be easier to do it now and spray it in one than it is to mess around with it afterwards. So from that point of view, we haven't put anything in the holes. I don't think we're going to get a mass amount of overspray in there to worry about going deep down inside. So I think we're going to be okay with that one. We also, as you can see, can mask up the top. The front's in. All this photo etch is put down, stuck down. Really happy how it is, and it's been checked and everywhere. So the last thing up we can do is start to put some of these areas on the front. So as you can see, we've got a little bit of white tack just down in here. This is just to make a nice seal on the top. All right, so when this guy comes in, it pushes in just like so. Okay. And it's enough to hold its own. We've got the, well done with it, here we go. Just got to do a little bit of clear work. We've got this little guy just down here on the side, got the side window here, so we need to actually put that one in. So just grab a bit more tack. Actually, I don't know where we're going to tack this one to, because it's a little bit low, so what we'll do is just hook that off. I have a better idea. We can actually have this as a separate fit. We've spoken about it during the build. So actually I think what we can do is poke him in like that. It is quite a good fit and it holds its own. So what I'm thinking is if we use a little bit more tack here, we can actually tack it in place from the inside. So what we'll do, we're just going to come up, pop that in, grab some tack. And this is what we're saying about being able to get in to the inside. We can literally just come in now and tack that in position from the inside, just like that. Okay, so that takes care of that one. This window up the side here is where I had a bit of a faux pas, and I've cut the window clean out. What I'm going to do is make up a replacement part to go in there. So what we're going to need is just a tiny little bit of tack in there. So we're just going to make a little sausage, probably a bit too much. Okay, and then what we're going to do is feed in this like so, and we're just going to poke it up and then shove it in. Okay, so it fills the gap. Okay, but don't have any bits hanging over the outside. So that one goes in there like that. And then this top one now can go back on. So we're just making sure that all lines up. That one's all in. And then the nose, we've got that little chip, little cut area out the front of it. So you know that needs to go up in the top. And then that will sit in just like that. Okay, and that gives us our bomber ready to go into paint. Okay, now obviously this thing is quite a large lump, it's going to take a lot of paint, you're going to get a lot of overspray and everything else like that. So from that point of view, what we're going to do now is move over to the spray booth behind, where we can set the cameras up in there to get the arm going and get this one all painted up. Okay, so here we are over in the spray booth, and as you can see, this thing is a monster. There's not many kits we can't deal with in this place, but because the amount of spraying and dust it's caused, I think it's easier to do this in the spray bay than anywhere else. So the first thing we want to do is do a job to cover up, obviously, the front area sections down here, purely so we get that look. So from the inside it looks like it's grey, even though it's going to be a bit shiny, but it's a quick way of painting the inside of the actual window. So we're going to use the same colour as the cockpit colour, so it all sort of blends in and goes together. Then we can do a quick seam check if we've got any leftover paint, and then after that, which we were very low on paint, but I didn't realise we were quite this low on paint, so we're just going to grab a little bit more thinners, and I'll make it up in the pot, because we are literally down to this amount of paint, so we haven't got much in here at all. Okay, so we're just going to grab a few more thinners just to put in there. Put you over there. Pop the lid on and just mix it up. So what I tend to do for the last of the paint, but when you pour it slowly, so it doesn't actually end up getting bits down in your nozzle. Okay, but what you tend to do, you can probably see it at the bottom here. It's isn't exactly a brilliant job. So what we do is just give it a bit of a shape. Just move this camera out just a fraction. There we go. So, okay, that's looking good. So when you do that, pour it slowly, so all these bits you can see down here go to the bottom. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, so we're just going to check our flow, see what we got. Pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around everywhere that's been masked just to sort of blend it in, but then also all the way over the clear parts as well. And as I say, this thing is a complete lump for fitting in here. So we're just going to dust over a coat. Okay, and at the same time, we're just going to put some over some of the joins, over this photo etch, just so it sort of brings up the layers. And it sort of starts to protect and work them in. Okay. And what we'll do is just gonna. This thing is too big. So we're not going to do the top of the nose because obviously we're standing on it at the moment. But technically, if we bring it around here, we can go in. So we can get an idea as well if you've got any seams and joins and things like that on the actual clear parts. If you've got an area where it's going to give you perhaps some trouble. This thing is an absolute monster. Top here. Building it up. So you're looking for, it's not one corner now, we'll just hit this for a sec. What you're actually looking for is anything that's going to give you away a little bit later on with your paintwork. So for instance, we've got a little bit of a seam running across the top here. Now the trouble with that is that it's where we've done the glue action for actually getting it in here. Everywhere else is quite good. You're also looking to see if you've got any sort of glue marks or anything else, fingerprints perhaps, around where you put down clear parts and certainly where you put down photo etch, okay? Because again, you can sand them now, otherwise you're going to see it a little bit later on when it comes into effect. You might be able to see, what you can see, grabbing this, the little hole just down here. So that's something I need to take care of, all right? So I can put in a little bit of filler, just a tiny bit, takes care of that. But doing these jobs now just speeds things up a little bit later on because you haven't got to come back and do any sort of, you know, fixing problems and going around it and everything else like that. So what I'm going to do is go around all the seams, check them all, okay, and then if we're happy, what we can do is clean up the entire model with a little bit of plastic prep or airbrush cleaner in our case and everything else, and we can get some primer down. Okay, so to be honest, I've gone around and I've touched in a couple of areas just around the front. Easy job, sanding stick, put that on, and it's still wet on there as we speak. Okay, next up, we're going to try something we've never tried before in a model, but I've done it in testing, seemed to work okay. This is MIG ammo, okay, not to be mistaken with, like, you know, AK and all the other ones. It's MIG ammo. This is their surface primer, which they're claiming is polymer, not polyurethane. And polyurethane is the one we've had trouble with over the last few months because it just takes too long to dry, okay? So I've already put in here a bolt or a nut, which is going around. Give it a good old mix because it does separate down the bottom, especially if you've got a new bottle. So make sure you give it a good old shake round and everything else. Now, to be honest, it's not particularly nice, this model, okay? It's got lots of fingerprints on it now and horrible bits and pieces. I've sanded them off and I've been around it with some airbrush cleaner on a paper towel just to get all the large bits off. But now what we want to do is actually give it a primer. So we're going to give it quite a heavy coat just to get everything to settle down and move down and everything else like that. So what we actually have is our surface primer in here. Now it is a grey colour, so we shouldn't have too much problems with it apart from the size of this thing. Alright, so all we're going to do, checking our flow, and we're just going to put down a nice light coat right the way over everywhere to start with, and then we're going to come back and we're going to add to it and make it thicker and heavier as we actually go. Now the trouble with this stuff, it stinks, to be honest. It's quite smelly. So all we're going to do is hit the extractor, get it going that way and out of the room. Okay, so we're just going to put a simple coat, one light coat over it, and then we'll come back and put the next coat, which will be a far heavier one. Okay, first coat down, looking quite good. It's drying very, very quickly, which is a good sign for us because the other one we use, which is the Revell, which is somewhere else. I've got one kicking around there, it's over out of the way. That one there takes a long time to dry. This seems to be going on well. Remember, wing roots, things with 90 degrees, a nice heavy coat of paint in there so you don't get any sort of problems with it sort of getting stipply texture and stuff like that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just put another coat right over the top, nice thick coat, so building it up so it will self-level and give us a very nice texture for the rest of our painting. Okay, so as you can see, we're back over here purely because I can't get the cameras to work in there. There's just not enough room for something this size. First time using the MIG ammo. This is the polymer surface primer, water-based. It's a bit smelly. I think if you didn't have an extractor, you're really going to know about it, to be honest, because it wouldn't take long to stink out a room. Let's just put it that way. So if you have got the family moan about your airbrushing and your smells, they're definitely going to love this stuff. It's not a horrible smell. It's just, I don't know. I tell you what it is. I figured it out as I was spraying it. In your childhood, when you use like poster paints, you know, when you're under 5 years old, it smells like that stuff. That's what it actually is. That said though, I do have to say a couple of things I like about it. One is it went straight over this with no problem whatsoever. Secondly, it's laid very, very nicely. I don't know how well obviously the cameras can pick out certain areas, but certainly up the top here, you know, I know, you know, obviously we sanded and filled it and all the rest of it, but there is no evidence whatsoever. There's no seam, there's no sink mark, there's no difference in it. And then also it's done a particularly nice job. We get one of the cameras, I don't know which one we're going to use, but the photo etch is nicely absorbed into it. Sometimes it's too raised. If you don't get down a good thick coat of paint around it, it can look a little bit artificial, and afterwards this actually blends it in really well. Normally what I tend to do is put on a couple of coats of clear over it to try and blend it in. This is just the primer coat, has gone in very, very nicely. The other thing as well is probably the best side to see it on this one. You might be able to see these seam lines down here. They weren't pretty, they were usable, don't get me wrong, and I wasn't going to go around and sand them because there's a little bit of detail in there, but they weren't that pretty. But now after putting this lot down, it's really gone in there very nicely. The other thing as well is I gave it a nice big thick heavy coat, as I always do, between, you know, a 90 degree between a wing and a fuselage, so you don't get that sort of dusty effect. But generally there isn't any sign of it absolutely anywhere at all. It's really nice. Now we haven't done the underside, and to be honest, this is just one coat as well on the top, so it's not like this has had multiple coats and been, you know, beat up. It's actually one coat, dusty coat down, and then one proper coat over the top, and literally that's it. So what I've got to do is get it back in the spray boot and spray it, but obviously with the cameras in there, it's pretty much of a no-no. So we've moved one of the cameras and we've got this nice overall shot from the side now coming in, just so we can keep this entire thing in here like this, because it is a complete monster. But I wanted to check in with you, as I said, first time I've actually used the they're calling it polymer surface primer. From my point of view, it gets a thumbs up. It's very nice. I haven't tried to sand it yet because I've got nothing to sand on it, but in a live show that we did last night, I gave it a whirl and it did sand okay as well. So from that point of view, if you are looking for something a little bit more user-friendly, shall we say, than perhaps our usual favourite, which is the surface primer by Vallejo. This is the polyurethane one, which tends to be a little bit rubbery. The trouble you have with that one is that when you're painting it down onto neat plastic, sometimes it takes a few coats, misty light coats, to build up before you can get a proper coat in on there. Otherwise it sort of beads up on itself. Haven't had that trouble now with the MIG ammo one. It's gone down, it's done a fantastic job. It's a very nice finish as well. It's a little bit rough, but to be honest, that's me in there and I was just chucking it down. You know, this isn't going to be particularly nice. It's going to be weathered and worn, so I wanted some texture into the paintwork. But generally, just looking at the top here, this surface work we've done, the lines around here and everything else, and one little area I do want to point out, this is where we fixed that canopy at the top here, okay? And what it was, I didn't show you, but I said about it, you could see a little joint between the glue marks of that weld system we use, and I went in there. So I actually gave it quite a blast of this over the top because it was a little bit scratchy. And as you can see, it's actually filled all of that very, very nicely with no problem at all of that. But generally, I think you can see on the overhead like this, when you catch it in the light, it's a very nice, smooth, satin type finish to it. It looks nice, it's handleable. I only sprayed it an hour ago, yet I'm very confident enough to handle this. Yet with the polyurethane, I might be a little bit wary about it as we make our way through. So definitely a thumbs up for this one so far. So next up, going to get it back in there. We get the underside painted up, get this one primed as well. This will get another coat of primer over the top as well when the bottom's dry, so it's going to be a little bit of rotations for a couple of hours to get this one up. Then we can go around, check some rescribing, because to be honest, we've got to do a little bit of rescribing work in here. Little things I want to tidy up before we get going with the paint, and then we can get going with the paint coat.